It's February. The city should not be removing or destroying tiny shelters until real alternatives exist and COVID-19 is under control.
A carpenter who builds small shelters for Toronto's homeless is currently in a court battle with the city who want him to stop. Now, if that isn't bad enough, you won't believe what part of their reasoning is. Now, before I get there, this carpenter's name is Khaleel Seivwright. I'm going to play for you in a bit a statement that he just put out in regards to the legal action being taken against him. But first here, I want to show you the impact that these small shelters have had on the homeless in Toronto. So they've actually put up several testimonials here on their page, Toronto Tiny Shelters. You can check it out. I won't play the entire 6 minutes here, but I'll play for you a piece of this. And it gives you an idea of how this has changed people's lives in Toronto.
One of the great things about them, because it's off the ground, even if it rains, like there's no dampness in there, like at all. It's warm and it's dry. And one of the problems with living out here is you never know if your things are going to get stolen. And I don't have the mobility to carry my stuff with me, like every time I go to the bathroom or go somewhere else. And with the shelter, they lock from the outside. You can also lock it from the inside. And as long as you put like an empty lock on it, when you're in there so no one can lock you in, then it's safe.
But in tent, I need 3 sleeping bags together. But here, 1 sleeping bag is good enough.
I think it's one of the best things that could happen for this city right now, to be honest, because without it, people will be dropping left, right, and center. I know with the COVID it doesn't help, but it's definitely made a big difference in my life.
This is my shelter box. This is where I am, and this is what I have, and this is good. It's the best thing that has ever happened because it's safe against all the elements.
And when I have this place, all my stress started to go down. I've been getting back into a routine. I've been sleeping solid hours every single night, going to bed, waking up, and I just feel more healthy, more like I just can actually have a life.
So that gives you an idea of how this has helped the homeless population in Toronto, who right now, faced with COVID, it's a lot tougher to be in a shelter with a bunch of other people because of the spread of COVID-19, which has happened in a number of shelters across the city. So being able to have a safe place during the winter where you can sleep like this and keep your belongings, obviously this has had a huge positive impact on their lives. And he actually raised, the carpenter, Khaleel Seivwright, raised over $200,000 for this. It's now closed, so I guess he's no longer taking money for this. But this image gives you an idea of the construction of the shelter. And let me now tell you what he's dealing with. So the city filed an application for an injunction on February 12th, seeking an order to stop Khaleel Seivwright from making, fixing, and relocating small wooden shelters on city-owned land. Seivwright says the city should focus its resources on getting people housed rather than fight him in court. He began making the structures last fall and has raised more than $200,000 to pay for building materials. The city says the structures are a fire hazard. Yeah. That's part of the reasoning about why he should stop. The structures are a fire hazard. Isn't sleeping outside during the winter a hazard to those individuals? The idea here that they're worried about a fire hazard, you can basically say this about every home. Every home can be a fire hazard. And by the way, each of these shelters are equipped with a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher. It's unbelievable that this is part of their reasoning, that it's a fire hazard. It's just it shows you what they value. They're more worried about city property than they actually are about the people that are forced to live outside. Now, let me play for you here part of Khaleel's statement that he just released today.
The city of Toronto has a housing crisis. This pandemic has made it worse. The shelter system has left many people with no options. With winter approaching, I knew that without shelter, people would die, as they do in Toronto every year. I started building tiny shelters so that some of the most vulnerable could have somewhere warm to go. The shelters I built are a small part of a temporary solution to keep people alive until they can access alternative housing. Each shelter includes a smoke and carbon monoxide detector and a fire extinguisher. I gave the tiny shelters to the community to decide how best to use them and who needs them most. Encampment residents tell me how important the tiny shelters have been, for their safety, for their privacy, and dignity. I hope there will be a day that the tiny shelters are no longer needed, but that day has not yet come. Instead of working with me, the city sued to stop me from building and relocating the tiny shelters. This is only a distraction. The problem is not the tiny shelters. The problem is that Toronto's most vulnerable people are falling through the cracks. Toronto shelters are too often at capacity. People tell me they have nowhere to go. The money the city is spending to attack me right now could be put into safe housing for those that need it.
Of course, he's exactly right. The idea of spending any money fighting this man who is building shelters for the homeless instead of actually using those resources to help the homeless really shows you how screwed up their priorities are. Now, a little more here from the Toronto Star. The city said Monday that the injunction application it filed against Seivwright on February 12th stands. It has said in its application that its bylaws prohibit camping and living in city-owned parks. Advocates say about 1,000 people are living outside, and the city said recently that it counted about 300 tents or structures in the city's parks and ravines. The city says the encampments are a safety hazard. So, about 1,000 people right now living outside in the city. There are already tents and other structures that the homeless are attempting to live in. Those are a lot less safe than living in these wooden structures. It's just incredible to me. Look, this clearly is not the solution. We shouldn't have to rely on people like Khaleel Seivwright to be the ones providing this sort of help. But in lieu of actual help for the homeless, this is a good Band-Aid for now. And for them to fight him on this, for them to value city property over the lives of individuals in the city, it's just stunning.